Welcome to Sikkim 365 Radio, presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com.
Johnson was coming after him, still chasing the quarterback, and forces him back inside. The ball out as he... And the officials say the Bears have it.
They drop out in coverage. Under pressure, Ellinger! It's Lynch. And James Lynch wraps him up.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
On the fake, on the slant, it's Denzel Mims, and the Bears take the lead.
Here's David Smoke, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoke.
Here we go, this 3 o'clock hour. We take you the next 3 hours into the weekend. We have evidence, we have facts, we have data, we have names and teams and players. And that's just the first round of 7 rounds in the NFL draft. Many things to get to. Does Denzel Mims of Baylor, is he drafted tonight? Is James Lynch drafted sometime tonight? Is Grayson Arnold a part of tonight? And also, does the SEC dominate round 1 with, I think, 15 or 16 players drafted? Do they continue to draft heavily into the SEC, although the Big 12 had, I think, 5 as is the Big 10. All right, Patrick Queen, linebacker from LSU. Taylor Bryan had this from Baylor. The 26th player off a Dave Aranda defense since 2012 and the 6th first rounder to be drafted.
It's a pretty nice stat that Taylor threw out last night. He was ready to go, and I saw, an LSU defender come off the board, and the immediate thought was, Dave Aranda. There's a connection there. And then a second LSU defender, and it's like another Dave Aranda guy, not to mention the offensive LSU players drafted he went against in practice every day. So there were a lot of ties. There were a lot of Baylor mentions on the broadcast last night as well. Matt Rule making his first draft pick. But, that was entertaining. It was different some ways from the typical draft broadcasts that we see, but it was entertaining. It was nice to see that broadcast last night.
I enjoyed it thoroughly. I thought that there was a lot of funny stuff that happened, a lot of interesting stuff. I got to say, and people can legitimately, dump on ESPN and whatever network that they don't. I thought the way that ESPN, NFL Network, and ABC put all that together, I like flipping back and forth with the college game day guys doing the ABC one, so you get the perspective on one, and then you flip over and watch the NFL Network and ESPN guys. That had to be really hard to do.
Let me tell you something. Let's put it in perspective. And we do have notes, of course. The Cowboys are becoming better and better in this draft business by doing what the good teams do, by waiting for talent to fall in their lap like they did with either CeeDee Lamb or Chase on, and they get the spectacular wide receiver from Oklahoma as if they need more bells and whistles. We are in the business. We're all here within, the 5 or 8, 10 feet of each other, right? Mm-hmm. Dylan Chapman, by the way, with us today. But we can see each other. Now, we could do this show if you were here and I was there and Craig was somewhere else, and we could still do that because we've done this long enough. It's called an IFB, which is a fancy word for an earpiece. A producer or director or somebody can talk to you. You don't see them. And imagine doing that with all of the talent, with all of the various cameras, with all the teams, with all of the players, with all the reporters and analysts, and it's just coming basically through ears.
Yeah, I can tell you just from my personal experience on Outside the Lines when I did that segment with Bob Lee, and they put an IFB in my ear, and there were actually 2 producers in 2 different cities having a very profane argument with one another, and that's another story for another day. But that was just for a hit for me and Mark Schlabach, 2 spots in the same spot, and it was in the same place. It was hard.
No, I remember the first live shot I ever did in television. I was scared to death because I was nervous about being live, and then you get used to it. You have an earpiece, but then you add dozens and dozens of names. There's going to be a glitch or two. I see people like I thought it considering the circumstances, it was spectacular. Am I right? The Cowboys, 254-339-1122 on the Riverbend Liquor and Wine text line. The Willis Law Firm chat room. Your thoughts about the Cowboys and CeeDee Lamb, your thoughts of how many Baylor players will be drafted in day 2? 1, 2, 4?
I had the selection we put up on the poll was 3, 4, 5, or more. That way it keeps it simple.
The rest of the draft.
Yeah, the rest of the draft.
Okay.
The next 2 days. Because I would say the bare is 3 because Denzel Mims, James Lynch, and Grayson are all going to get drafted. And then I would think it's probably in the 5 range because I think Jamison Houston probably gets picked up. And then you take your pick of some of the other guys. Somebody probably those 7th round gets. I mean, that's making sure you get guys so they don't get signed by someone else.
That's the Sick'em 365 radio question of the day. How many more players or how many players will be drafted by Baylor players in the next 2 days? Craig, what would be your pick?
I'd say like around 5 guys get drafted. You know, I haven't sat down and written it down in 5 firmly, but just off the top of my head answering that question, I'd say around 5. I think Grayson gets drafted. I think Denzel and James Lynch obviously get drafted. And I think 1 or 2 more, like a Bravion Roy or Jermichael Hasty, you know, some guys in the 6th, 7th rounds I think could be additions as well. So I'll say around 5 guys. I mean, 3 will be for sure. I think 3 you can lock in, but I do think there will probably be 1 or 2 others that are able to get into that mix as well. But I think when all is said and done, undrafted-wise, it'll be closer to 10. But I know that's not the question you're asking. And going back to that Dave Aranda stat that you threw, I mean, that's not just something to lightly go over. 26 players off Dave Aranda defenses since 2012, and that's 3 guys at a clip each year on defense going to the NFL. That's pretty incredible, and with the defensive success Baylor had last year and how excited that got people, I think you got to be frothing at the mouth to know that this staff could actually improve recruiting and bring in even better players based on what Matt Rule was able to finish out with, the success he was able to finish out with, but also the success of this staff. So I think that's got to get a lot of people excited about defenses for years to come.
So it's Paul Catalina, it's Craig Smoke, I'm David Smoke, and then Dylan Chapman is here today. Deontay Epps was here visiting us yesterday. And by the way, I want to shout out to our great friend Andrew Baker, who's listening today on Sick'em 365 Radio as well. Now, how about this note? When Baylor beat TCU in triple overtime up for it, Jalen Reagor, the year before, destroyed Baylor with 2 plays. Two plays. A punt return and then a flea flicker reverse. He had 2 carries for 4 yards, 1 catch for 8 yards. I think Jamison Houston had him pretty much
just shut him
on and
down.
off. Just
shut him down.
Just couldn't do anything. And then you wonder, well, what the hell was TCU thinking when they only got 3 touches in the first? He didn't do anything with punt returns either. He is a spectacular, dynamic type player. He was drafted, and I'm not arguing with Jalen being drafted, but that should be, if the people are watching the film, with what Jamison Houston did. On that same day, Jeff Gladney, who's a really good corner who was drafted in the first round, Denzel Mims and Gladney had a fantastic battle in that game. Denzel made big plays in that. It's just, I've had some of you go, hey, how did that happen? It's a fit, and it's sometimes not just one game. Jalen Reagor's a fan. Remember what Matt Rule said about him?
Yeah, I mean, they're great individual players. That's why they're getting drafted, is they're great individual players. It might have worked out at TCU from a team aspect. Clearly it did not. If you have 3 first-rounders and you don't even make a bowl game, I mean, that's a bit problematic. But no, just because you didn't have a great team doesn't mean they don't have great players, and they clearly have some great players as evidenced by last night.
All right, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, the text line, 254-339-1122. Let's go. Let's go into the weekend with our hair on fire. How many players from Baylor will be drafted today and or tomorrow combined from 3, 4, 5, or whatever? And who will they be? 254-339-1122. Also, the chat room brought to you by the Willis Law Firm. The Willis Law Firm out of Houston on the Sick'em 365 Willis Law Firm chat room. Also, 6 players from the state of Texas, 7 from the state of Texas drafted. 15 from the SEC drafted.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. I mean, to have nearly first round, I mean, that is pretty crazy.
6 of the first 10.
Yeah.
5 from the Big 10. 5 from the Big 12. ACC Pac-12 had 3. Mountain West had 1.
Hey, I don't think we need to gloss over, and not that you were, but I don't think we need to gloss over the Big picks last night, because that was actually a good number of picks for the Big 12 in the first round versus I guess the last several years.
Yeah.
I mean, especially if you take out the automatic Oklahoma first rounder, then it's really been kind of few and far between for the Big 12 schools to have a guy. I mean, there's occasionally a TCU player. They had was it Collier last year?
Yeah.
That went in the first play. Occasionally there's a guy or two, but to not only have, 5 guys, which is, I don't know, it seems like the most they've had in quite some time. But the biggest thing is who those 5 guys were. And think of the Big 12, those were not a bunch of quarterbacks and wide receivers and skill guys. Those were defensive players for the most part. They were getting drafted out of the Big 12. So I think that shows you the way the conference had sort of flipped as of last year, and we saw that with the play of most every team, that there was a reliance on defense or a move towards defense, and that showed last night. So I think that's a good thing for the Big 12 to play off of and really use to their advantage in recruiting and be able to say, like, hey, yeah, we didn't have first round, but look, we're playing some defense here, and we're getting some guys drafted in the first round.
For those of you listening to us on Periscope, YouTube, Facebook, or Sikkim 365, thank you on this Friday afternoon. Just got a note from D. Carter about something with his internet. The audio might be skipping.
Yeah,
a lot of times,
I'm working on that. I don't know what's going on, so I'm working
okay.
on
So
it.
we're working on that.
Yeah.
So we'll thank you for letting us know. And hopefully it's not to the point where it's going to keep you from listening, because we have an amazing show. David Helman, DallasCowboys.com at 3:15. I want to get back to the CeeDee Lamb pick. With 3:45, Grundhoefer on Baylor. 4 o'clock today, Brad Sham, voice of the Cowboys. 4:30, John, former Lorena and Baylor running back, star at Lorena. Put up huge numbers. At 4:45, 18-year NFL veteran Josh McCown on evaluating quarterbacks. His thoughts. 5 o'clock, Danny White. 5:30, Hall of Famer Warren Moon. Right here on Sikkim 365 Radio. CeeDee Lamb. Craig, you're a huge Oklahoma fan. There was thoughts that he would probably be gone by the 8th, 9th, 10th, 12th pick. Were you stunned that he was there when the Cowboys picked at 17?
I mean, sort of, kind of, not entirely. I think that, there's a lot of bold proclamations made before the draft, and 95 of them are typically wrong, but we don't go back and revisit those. So you could have had a lot of people talking about him not being there, but look, they were all wrong. Every single one of them that said that, because he was there. And it's a crapshoot. You just don't know how it's going to unfold. The percentages might have been low or not, we're still there in the Cowboys' favor, and they had a choice to make. And the football brain, the draft best player available versus draft by need conversation had to come up for them, and they went with the best available player, and I don't blame them for that.
They could have moved down and gotten Chase on, perhaps, or might have missed both of them.
Well,
could have gotten a wide receiver a little bit further down, gotten an extra. But what the Cowboys are seemingly starting to do is let the draft come to them.
Well, and they made an egregious error 3 years ago when they drafted Taco Charlton. He was not the best player on the board. TJ Watt was the best player on the board, and they thought, well, this guy's more of a 4-3 guy, and TJ Watt's more of a 3-4 guy, so let's not take TJ Watt, as opposed to taking TJ Watt and making it work. And TJ Watt obviously has been better than Taco Charlton, who's now on his second team. CeeDee Lamb was the 6th player they had rated on their board, and they got him at 17. So he's a first-round for sure, because sometimes teams only have 15, 12 guys rated with first-round grades, and everybody else has second-round grades. Well, he had a first-round grade for sure. If he's the 6th guy on their board, you got to take him. Yeah, he's not the immediate need, but I don't think you can pass that up. And I think you have an embarrassment of riches at wide receiver now.
But let's say that both Lamb and Chason were both ranked 6, 7, 10, 12, whatever. They would still take the offensive player. They can't help themselves. This is not a bad pick. I'm not arguing the pick, right?
Yeah.
But they can't. Like, that's like crack.
Yeah.
Offense, weapons. Do you need another one?
Mickey said, everybody said, well, you need help at wide receiver, and it's the case. No matter, they could have 6 receivers on the team, and all of them be average to better. And I still feel like every year with the Cowboys, they need a wide receiver for some reason. But there's a need at the 3rd wide receiver spot, so they have a first-round draft pick now as their 3rd wide receiver, as their 1st wide receiver. And not a first-rounder, but pretty close to it, and Michael Gallup as their number 2 wide receiver. So I look at it from, could they have used help elsewhere? Certainly. But I also look at it from the standpoint of who's going to cover these guys? I mean, who's got a 3rd corner that's going to be able to cover CeeDee Lamb one-on-one regularly? I don't know that there's too many out there. That's what they were looking at, and fascinating pick. I mean, he's going to sell a lot of jerseys. He's going to create a lot of excitement, more so than probably a Chase on Wood. But you still have some obvious needs. address the next couple of days, but I'm not mad at the CeeDee Lamb pick at all.
All right, 254-339-1122, the Riverbend Liquor and Wine text line open. The Willis Law Firm chat room at Sikkim365.com open. Cowboys, did you like what they did? Are they getting better and better with letting the draft come to them? Not always. No one's perfect. But your thoughts about how many Baylor players are drafted today and or tomorrow combined? And we start with the number 3. We feel like that's the minimum. How much more, if any, than that? We'll come back. David Helman, DallasCowboys.com. Grayson Grundhoefer will join us on Baylor and anything new in the recruiting. We have Brad Sham, Josh McCown, Danny White, Warren Moon, and former star and Baylor running back John Henry. Here we go. 65. At Ideal MRI, we are blessed to be a part of the Waco